on in the incident. The Medline facility that's still burning behind me, we had a fire that was somewhere near the top of the roof and somewhere on the inside of the facility. That investigation, whether it started inside or outside, is still underway and still currently happening. We had immediate water challenges with the yard hydrants around the property itself, which created some challenges for our firefighters. They did an aggressive fire attack. Unfortunately, they were not successful. Within 40 minutes, the building was fully consumed with fire. We did a defensive approach at that point. There was a lot of ember casting. As you can imagine, a facility of this size, over 1 million square feet, that ended up going several miles, up to 2.5 miles away from this location, that started several grass fires and almost caught the FedEx facility that's adjacent to the Medline facility. That fire was mitigated by an aggressive fire attack. There was 200 pallets stored up against the FedEx facility, as well as vegetation and trailers that also caught fire. We manage all of our resources from 7 stations, 8 companies. So a fire of this size quickly has challenges for our local resources. We had to rely on mutual aid and automatic aid partners. To that, we're very, very thankful. We were able to mitigate the 2 additional grass fires as well that were on Lammers Road, as well as the Tracy Airport. And so firefighting continued throughout the evening. We had fire crews here at the Medline and FedEx facilities, as well as the Lammers grass fire location. And basically they continue to put out hot spots all night long. And the trailers that are adjacent to the building itself were posed a challenge all night long. So they had commodities in these trailers. Most of them are full. They were ready to be shipped out, and fire inadvertently got into those trailers and they were igniting all night long. So a lot of saw cutting and salvage and overhaul to extinguish those trailers from trying to limit the additional ember casting throughout the evening. We brought in fresh crews this morning. They're getting ready to do a crew change. And so we have fresh individuals ready for a fresh 24-hour operational period. The crews that were here all night long will return back to their fire stations and try to get some rest while remaining in service for any additional 911 calls that happen to come in within our jurisdiction in the Tracy area. We're continuing to work with a lot of our state resources and mutual aid partners throughout this process. We have the fire investigation that will be starting to ensue with some participation from the ATF and with our fire investigation as well. And one of the main potential focuses, as well as continuing to put out hot spots, is there were a lot of trucks that were not impeded with fire or affected in any way. And so we're going to devise a plan, if we can, and it's safe to do so, to be able to get those truck drivers in, to get all of that commodity that's still loaded in those trucks to area hospitals. So that there's a lot of medical equipment that are loaded up in those trucks that those hospitals and medical facilities are relying upon. This distribution center, this devastating fire is going to affect e-commerce, throughout the nation, definitely on the western part of the United States, as this was the main distribution center for all medical supplies. And I'm open to answering any questions that you have.
Chief Bradley talked about some of the challenges you faced with water supply yesterday. Can you talk specifically about the hydrants on site, and then also touch on what you now know, 16 hours later, about the lack of a sprinkler system functioning, or maybe it wasn't functioning up to par with what a facility of this size and magnitude would need to have?
Yes, so the sprinkler system was tested by a sprinkler company, an alarm company, in January of this year, and it was completely signed off. However, when our crews were engaging in the firefight, they did not recognize any fire sprinkler activations at all throughout the entire facility. And they were in there for a solid 10 minutes trying to knock down the fire, and the fire spread laterally from all the high rack pile storage very, very quickly, which if there were sprinkler systems activated, that would not run that fast. And they didn't see any actual water on the inside. And when we went, the fire marshal was very quickly on scene, went straight to the fire pump room, which is a large fire pump to pump water through all of those sprinkler heads to assist and augment the system. That was reading at 0. So we knew that there was no water flowing, which all of that fire pump also supplies the yard hydrants directly adjacent within the facility itself. And so that we had limited to no water coming out of those hydrants. So we had to connect to the municipal water system outside of the property lines. The longest hose lay that we laid was 1,600 feet. So to put that into perspective, one of our fire engines carries our large diameter hose to connect to fire engines is 800 feet. So it took 2 fire engines just to connect from the fire hydrant to get it close enough to apply water to the actual fire.
Do you know how many cars were destroyed in this? And do you know how soon it might be until you can get those truck drivers inside and look at equipment?
It's going to be several hours before we can get an assessment to see if we can safely let any drivers in, as well as I got to talk to the fire marshal to make sure that's not going to impede in the investigation in any way, shape, or form.
How many evacuations go in there? Did you guys have to do any actual kind of like dramatic rescues or anything?
We didn't have to do any rescues. We were very, very pleased with the facility. We've worked well with them, done many fire inspections and tours inside this facility. Our crews were very familiar. The operations manager had everybody evacuated before the first engine arrived.
And how about the air quality right now? Can you speak to that and what we know about any chemicals or toxins in there?
Sure. So the air quality today, because of the weather, we're going to continue to have high winds and high temperatures and low humidity. So the the air quality today is definitely not good. We are continuing to do air monitoring with the air pollution control, and we're trying to assemble some hazmat teams to do some additional air monitoring in the area. None of that air monitoring has come back with any grave concerns to have any protective actions in place. And so ultimately right now, the best thing though for the community is to kind of stay sheltered and, in place, stay away from the outdoors, especially if you're in and around the immediate Tracy area.
Can you quantify how many gallons per minute of water are being placed on this fire and have been ever since you all took the defensive surround and drown stance?
Sure. So several thousands of gallons per minute. We've had ladder trucks and ground monitors flowing pretty much throughout the evening, so we're well over 1 million of gallons at this point.
And yesterday you guys said that there were explosions that were heard here on site. You were investigating what was the cause of that, potentially vehicles. Do you know what may have caused that?
Yeah, several truck tires were exploding, that were on fire adjacent to the building itself, as well as there were explosions from the inside. We do know that there are hazardous materials on the inside of this facility, and so what actually caused the majority on the inside, that we still don't know.
Oh, so just confirming, yesterday you said you were going to review if there were hazardous materials, and as
Yes.
of this morning, you now know that there are hazardous materials. Do you know what they are?
Yes. I have not directly had an opportunity to look at that list. It's a pretty big size list of hazardous materials, and so we passed that off to our hazardous materials team. And one of the major challenges, I guess, with hazardous materials is there was a lot of robots on the inside with lithium-ion batteries. They had high rack pile storage where the robots, eliminate the workforce and get an opportunity to have, pulling items and stuff off of the racks. And so all of that all burned, and lithium-ion batteries that, get destroyed by fire end up causing, hydrogen fluoride gas, and that's not good.
Has that been another concern for your crews? Because as we know, those lithium-ion batteries just go up, and that can cause a major long-term health risk for our firefighters.
Absolutely. So anybody that's been in the immediate area has been required to wear our self-contained breathing apparatus, and so they will continue to do that throughout today's operations as well.
Is there a criminal investigation going on into how the fire started, and what do we know about its origin point? As you mentioned yesterday, it was sort of near the roof.
Yeah, we saw some of the video that was posted, quickly online. So the online, world saw it faster than we did, and with today's world of technology. At 9 o'clock, the ATF and our fire investigation team will start trying to piece everything together, as well as doing interviews with the original 911 caller, and take the investigation from there.
And when it comes to those lithium-ion batteries, is it going to make the firefight more difficult? Does it take longer to put out that material?
Yeah, there aren't very many 1 million square foot facilities that end up burning, and so this is kind of new for the fire departments nationwide. So it's going to kind of be indicative of us to just kind of learn as we go, I guess. But we do expect it to continue to burn and be too hot to actually get investigators inside the walls for at least a couple more days.
I know you have plenty of help here with mutual aid, but what type of a toll does this type of huge fire have on your department?
So yeah, yesterday we had well over 120 firefighters that were fighting this fire. over 35 fire apparatus. And so it quickly overwhelms resources and draws down from Alameda County, Stanislaus County. We had multiple strike teams in the area, as well as our local San Joaquin County units. And so it puts a strain on the entire system. But that's what the fire service is good at. We participate in the California mutual aid system. And so everything from incident command teams to, individual fire engines and other apparatus, we can quickly assemble them, get them on the road quickly, and get them to where they need to be.
And then are you ready for the long haul? That being said, Chief touched on yesterday how this could be a couple of days, could be several days. Unified command, will other agencies step in and assist and help out tired firefighters and replenish resources?
Absolutely, and they've been, all of our mutual aid and automatic partners have been tremendous. They're the ones replacing our crews this morning, so they're already stepping up and doing that to get our Tracy firefighters some rest that they need for sure after staying up all night. And we'll continue to rely upon all of those, state and federal agencies to assist us throughout this process.
What about the FedEx building? Is that still evacuated, and are there any plans for return to any other buildings around here too?
The FedEx building was re-energized with electrical at about 10 p.m. last night, and gas will be re-energized sometime this morning. We did confirm that that interior of that building was not compromised in any way, and so ultimately it's going to be up to the FedEx. They have a security team and a safety team that after any type of an incident goes into their facility and does a complete 360-degree evaluation, and they will make that determination on behalf of their own employees if they're going to bring them back to the workforce. Firefighting activities have kind of ceased on that property, other than continuing to monitor for hot spots in trailers, vegetation, and the pallets that burned.
How long have you personally been with the fire service, and have you ever seen anything quite like this?
I've been in the fire service 27 years, 20 with the city of Tracy, and no, this is the largest fire that I've managed. Like I said, we had 35 engines on scene with 120 personnel. That's a very large and complex incident, and very fortunate we didn't have any immediate injuries for firefighters and or civilians. We did have one firefighter late last night, about 1 in the morning, that had some back spasms and ended up being transported to Sutter Tracy Hospital, and we're continuing to check on his condition.
So when it comes to the firefight last night, you weren't necessarily trying to put out the flames anymore. At this point, would you say you're just trying to put out hot spots?
Yeah, so because of the weather that's ensuing, and you can see the ember casting that's still starting to pick up, that is of grave concern for us. We don't want any additional incidents to extend beyond this building. And so one of the major focuses is going to continue to put water application on the what we call the Alpha Delta corner, which is the one that's most problematic right now. And so ground monitors and ladder operations will continue to happen throughout the day to knock down the ember casting as much as we can as the weather continues to increase.
And obviously we're in a pretty industrial area. There aren't houses nearby, but can you again touch on the broader impact for the surrounding communities and how you all are going to be watching for those embercast fires that may pop up, those spot fires that may pop up?
Sure. So today's weather in regards to wind is going to be very similar to yesterday. We had sustained winds about 20 miles an hour with gusts up to 25 to 30 miles an hour. That ember casting large portions of the debris that had burned landed several miles away. So the best thing that the Tracy community can do at this point is to just stay in, shelter in place, stay indoors, limit their activities to indoors, especially if they have any medical problems or pets that suffer in that type of an environment.
And business operations, to the extent that you know them right now at the surrounding warehouses, are those places still evacuated? Are there portions of those buildings that are still evacuated?
Sure. So the majority of all of these businesses are still in operation. And so most of them have been a distribution center style. The truck drivers come, they quickly get their forklifts and trailers loaded, and then they quickly drive away. So there's not very much opportunity for them to be outside congregating or staying around to be in the elements. So they are all still in full operation.
And you mentioned some of the product that is still on the big rigs that are on site. Was that like a surprise, or did the people who own this, manage this, kind of give you a heads up that we still have a lot of product and overhead in the parking lot that will go up in flames if fire gets to it?
Yes, we've been in constant communication with the Medline, command staff or executive staff, and the regional fleet manager made us aware of, the high priority for them if we could make accommodations to get the drivers in for the unaffected equipment loaded in those trucks. And so we will continue to do that if it's safe to do so and doesn't impede the fire investigation.
Have they quantified for you how much in losses they have incurred? What are the damages?
Not yet. I think they're still trying to wrap their heads around that as well.
Okay.
How many robots or lithium-ion batteries are you?
There were several hundred when we did walkthroughs before. All of our crews were intimately familiar with that project. At the time, it was a $500 million upgrade to that facility, just the robotics and the high rack pile storage at that point. So major loss for the entire building.
We talked about the sprinkler inspection. How often are those supposed to happen? I know you said this one was in January.
Yeah, they're supposed to happen annually at a minimum, and then the major sprinkler tests are every 5 years. And so everything was fully checked out in January, so we're going to have to find out.
And who's responsible for checking that? Is that Tracy Fire? Is that another entity?
It's an outside third-party contractor that the facility themselves can hire, and then our fire personnel are there to kind of manage and just kind of oversee and make sure that everything was done correctly from the third-party testing agency. So we do have fire inspectors through our Community Risk Reduction Division. They stay very busy. We're one of the fastest growing cities in California and one of the largest defense or distribution warehouse capitals of the world.
And what's the name of that third-party inspection service that you all work with?
So it's the one that they choose. There are several in and around our area, and I don't have that answer for you.
So yesterday you said 120 employees evacuated with no injuries. Typically there's about 900 people on site. The building's gone. Any word on just how many jobs might be lost potentially because of this?
I heard that there's somewhere around 900 employees that work here total on different shifts. So huge devastation for those that live and work in the immediate area, as well as everything from all of the goods that are transported nationwide to medical facilities. This is high-grade medical equipment, everything that goes on ambulances to hospitals. So pretty devastating.
Now, is it believed that there were 900 people at the time of the fire, though, or because I don't know how this is a 24-hour operation?
Sure. So there were only just a little over 100, so about 120 personnel. And like I said, the vice president of operations was on site and accounted for every soul that was inside the building. So very, very happy to report that there were no injuries.
Do you guys have any opportunities for aerial drops yesterday, whether here or any of the spot fires?
No, typically on the size of fire like this, commercial warehouses, we don't use helicopters to do any airdrops. It's more for wildland urban interface fighting. So everything is done by ground monitors or aerial operations from ladder trucks.
I've heard this described, I don't know if it was you guys, but I heard at some point yesterday, as one of the worst fires of its kind in the country. Is that something you corroborate, and can you talk about why that is?
Sure. So there's been distribution centers that have burned throughout our nation, but to have one, over 1 million square feet, there's only been, 2 or 3, that we are aware of. And so it's very, very challenging. You can imagine it's a skyscraper laying on its side.
It's a good way to put it in perspective. And then have you been contacted by agencies from across the country, like a playbook going forward? What is to be learned from this? What are other agencies going to take away from this? If you had to sideline quarterback this thing in a couple of weeks, is there anything that you think you could have done better or attacked it in a different way?
Yeah, we're less than 24 hours currently into that incident, so we have not had any communication with any other agencies that have been through this before. If we run into any complications or challenges with our particular incident, we'll definitely reach out and use those resources as available. Okay. Thank you.
Can you say your name on the record?
Exactly.
It's Brian Bagley, Brian Bagley, Deputy Chief.